friends, welcome back to my channel. I have for you today a traveler's notebook spread using the April Color Cast Designs release. Here I laid out some of the ones I was considering using. The first of these hexagons with these lovely embossed flowers. I thought immediately of dandelions because some of them look like weeds, and I immediately thought of this photo that I knew I had, and it took me just a little while to search for it on Google Photos. I love the search capabilities of that, and I found it. For this layout, because the colors are very soft on the photo, I didn't want to use the really bright elements from this release. I'm separating out all the light acrylics. They are slightly yellowish tint, like an off-white. From my stash, I pulled a set of flare that I thought matched the colors. A second wood veneer set that comes out in the April release. I don't know the names she's given these sets, by the way. But this one is little word strips, and some of the sentiments are like just lovely, so good, spark joy, but then there's things like ugh, and there's no way. I picked out the phrases that could work on this, and I brought a few other items from my stash. But before I could start decorating, I needed to cut down my photo. I printed this to be a double-page traveler's notebook spread. The photo is 8.5 inches across and 8.25 inches tall. You saw I trimmed the top and bottom from the 8.5 by 11 paper I printed on. And then I used my blade to cut into the middle, which is at 4.25, just to give me a little mark where the cut's going to be. I didn't want to cut the whole thing apart because I like to build my traveler's notebook spreads straight across. With the hexagons, it made sense to nestle them together in a pattern. So I started building that up on the left-hand side. At the top, I have this paper. It's like a border lacy paper, and it's actually really old, from Martha Stewart. I think they were meant to make some sort of napkin holders for the table settings or something like that. And I brought it in because I thought it was really pretty, kind of remind me of the laciness of a dandelion. I'm going to use that as the border at the top. Now I don't want to do just a bunch of hexagons. I want to bring in some interest. I pulled the flare and I'm trying out some of that and some of the acrylics in different spots. But the idea I wanted to have is that if you had drawn more hexagons around them, they would fit within the hexagons that are joined together, if that makes sense. At least on the left-hand side, that's the design aesthetic I was going for. On the top right side, because the space is tighter, I chose to do a clustered layered design. That chipboard set, by the way, is from the Ali Edwards May Breathe story kit. By this point, I have most of my elements and placement fairly chosen, but I did want to add a couple things. I knew I needed to have a little tiny bit of journaling. I printed this photo as a full page TN spread size with the intent that this is going to go in a TN. I'm just starting. You'll see the cover in a little bit. I'm just starting this, and it's going to house photos that I just absolutely adore. They don't necessarily have a story to tell, or they might not really be part of Project Life, but I wanted to single out photos that take my breath away. However, I did want to add a little blurb about what's going on there. So that's one thing I want to add is journaling. But even before that, right here, what I'm doing is I'm typing up a quote, and it says, "Moments like this should come with a pause button." I saw that on a journal card by the same gal that did this flare set, the Crafty Pocket, although she just changed the shop name to Humble and Create. I saw this on one of her journal cards, and I could have taken the digital card, recolored it, and printed it out, but I decided just to type it onto vellum into a hexagon shape, and that way I could add this to the whole hexagon structure. Plus, introducing another translucent element and a different texture really appealed to me. As you can see, I typed it up several times before I felt like I got it right. And I'm using a stylus to just kind of emboss around it to give me a guideline so where I could cut around it. I could have used a pencil, but I didn't want to deal with any possible smudging of the pencil. As it is, I was worried that the typed ink would smudge a bit because I was too impatient to wait for it to dry, but it did okay. So let's fast forward a little bit and get on with reassembling the layout. I've got most of the elements into place. You can see I slotted in the vellum hexagon where the circle chipboard was and moved that over, and then moved everything slightly upward. I'd also switched the top left hexagon because it was too similar to the other one next to it. I was convinced I liked the scallop border at the top, so I did cut that off and used adhesive to keep it in place. And then I play around with the chipboard, the acrylic pieces. I didn't want to fill the entire left-hand side. I do want to leave some white space, so I'm just trying to find a balance between the shapes and the sizes and the textures. The flare felt like it was standing out too much, both literally, height-wise, and figuratively, in drawing attention away from the photo itself, so none of the flare makes it on. I will add some more texture with some thread. I'm going to twirl it around my fingers, make a little loops, and put it behind both chipboards actually. At this point, the only thing I'm not happy with is the title below. It says happiness. Under it was a wood veneer word strip, and I felt that I needed something else down there instead of wood veneer. It made sense to me to add an element that had blue in it to form a visual triangle, and I pulled some LE Studio labels thinking that would be a good spot for the smidge of journaling that I did off camera on a post-it. Of all the labels I tried, the one that fit the space best and coloring wise was good had a really wide border with the blue, and so I just trimmed that off, made it a little skinnier, and it fits really nicely nestled under happiness to the right of the P. So I write the journaling in pencil just to make sure it fits, and then I pull the traveler's notebook covers out so I can make sure that the happiness acrylic is not going to interfere where the holes need to be punched for the rings. I check it a couple of times and move things around, and I realize something that's bothering me is the label is really stark white. So I pull a couple of inks to distress the label a little tiny bit. I grabbed the Color Theory gray area, that's a Studio Calico, and the Hero Arts Shadow ink in Soft Stone. I used the distress tool to lightly add some color onto the label. I probably could have darkened it a little bit more, but I think it's fine. Adding the journaling darkens it a little bit too. So it reads, happiness is ... Dandelion wishes on a walk after celebrating Easter at Muffy's house. And Muffy is the nickname of my husband's grandmother. And I added a date. I did it all by hand because I wanted it to be different from all the text on the other elements on the layout. I am a little disappointed in my messy writing, but I feel that that was the best way to go. Then I removed the backing to the happiness acrylic, and to be honest, this is a thing that I thought, well, I shouldn't have done that because I liked that happiness stood out a little bit more in that area with the backing. But what's done is done, and in the past I've left the backing on acrylics and they start flopping off because it's not sticky on there. I'm going to fast forward because now I do take off the backings to all the other elements that are sticky and I adhere them down. Here I'm making my little thread loops for the other chipboard. Sometimes I make them a little messier and sometimes I make them really loop-de-loopy. Yes, I just made up that word. And I get that in place, and then I'm going to do something I don't normally. I'm bringing over my big Caterpillar Pro onto my desk. I definitely prefer to cut standing up, but I wanted to show you guys how great the Caterpillar Pro is at cutting accurately and through the wood veneer, which isn't thick wood veneer, but still pretty substantial, and it cuts through really easily. I put out feelers recently if anyone would be interested in a My Favorite Things type of review video, and I got a resounding yes. So I'm compiling a list and getting that ready. Look out for that coming soon. I'm pretty sure the Caterpillar Pro is going to make the cut on that video because it's definitely one of my favorite tools ever. I had to adjust the lacy paper. I don't even know what to call that. The border, the lacy border, because it wasn't on straight. But once I fixed that, and I finished cutting. I was really happy with the results, and I did cut my photo in half. Now I wanted to add some splatters. I wasn't sure if blue was the right way to go. I do love the Heidi Shine in navy because it has that iridescent that shows up. But I did pull also my Tattered Angels in Moonlight and mixed it up because I always find that the navy is too dark. This little piece of photo paper with part of a small photo is the same one that I printed large, and I did a test piece. I learned this recently when you're gonna print something out to have a scrap piece of photo paper and print it smaller so that you can see if the coloring's right. In this case, it was actually too dark and I ended up lightening up my photo before I printed. Anyways, I used that to put some splatters on to test and see if the navy was good or if maybe white would work. I pulled out Studio Calico White Shine and I went with the navy. But before I do my splatters, I decide to do the holes. Now, the Traveler's Notebook cover is from Colorcast Designs, this one that says Love, 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 and it has 6 holes. I didn't realize till after I punched all the holes I probably could have gotten away with only punching 2 holes and only punching those 2 holes out of any consecutive layouts because there are only 2 rings I'm going to be putting through it. Oh well, I punched all 6 holes on both sides of my spread. I actually like the look of the holes there. I don't know, something about it is really appealing. But then again, I'm the kind of person that likes the D-rings. I don't mind the separation of pages. And I don't actually like traditional traveler's notebooks that are a booklet and joined together because I just can't work on those. My brain can't deal with the fact that the pages are all together. Okay, back to what I'm doing. Punching holes. I'm sorry it's off camera. I'm leaning it upwards so that I can see through where I'm punching. I was using the We Are Memory Keepers Power Punch, and I just needed to be able to see into the slot. Got the holes punched, and I realized I needed to move the label over just slightly, so I do that. Then I'm going to glue down the acrylic. I used to only use the red line tape on the acrylic, but with these intricate words, it's hard to cut a whole bunch of little pieces, and if you have some pieces, they can stand out through the acrylic. That happened to one of my projects back in February. I put the red line and then you could see little rectangles of tape underneath and it bothered me to no end. So I've switched to using the Liquitex matte medium in the fine line bottle. It totally disappears. It holds really strong. I'm really happy with that. The vellum hexagon was slightly crooked, so I used the undo to pull it up and adjust, and fortunately it didn't really smudge the ink on there. And finally, I mask off areas and do some splatters. I can never control the splatters enough, but at least I didn't get it like all over my daughter's face or anything. All right, my dears, that's going to wrap up this video. Still photos are coming up. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming back. Everyone who's a subscriber, I really appreciate it. I'm almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is amazing. Thank you all for the wonderful support. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that little button and join us. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us creators reach out to other people that might enjoy our videos. And that's a lot of ands in a row. And hit that notification button so you won't miss out on the My Favorite Things video that'll be coming up really soon. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I'll see you here next time.